Our beloved 8% Hard AF Seltzer is now live in over 1,200 locations across the United States. We're now available in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, North Carolina, Ohio, and Texas. Go to hardafseltzer.com today, click on the store locator, enter your city or zip, and find the nearest location closest to you. Welcome to Drinking Bros, presented by GhostBed.com. Yeah, welcome to Drinking Bros, kids. Got a little bit of rasp in my voice here. These Friday shows always get wild. We did the Super Bowl extravaganza show right before this. Hopefully you guys won. Hopefully we won. Obviously, this show is always recorded on Fridays. Today, we wanted to bring in Matt Bilinsky to the show here as our legal analyst to go over some of the Biden DOJ shit that's going down right now. This was a wild one.
Absolutely.
This was a wild one. So this broke yesterday when we were doing fake news, and we were kind of catching up with it in real time. Now all the information has come out and is out into the world here. What do you make of all of this? Because it seemed like the DOJ obviously gave him a little slap on the hand, nothing big. But
Sure.
The other part of this is he kind of went scorched earth and said that this guy has no idea where he's at and doesn't remember anything of what he's done. And we should also forgive him for that.
Yeah, it was a fascinating report, and it kind of harkens back to James Comey's report about Hillary Clinton's handling of classified information as well, where he essentially said, hey, she did it. She acted in a grossly negligent manner, but we're simply not going to prosecute her for it. The DOJ in this case, I believe the last name is H-U-R, he came up with a very novel explanation for why he was not going to prosecute Joe Biden for mishandling of classified information and documents, after he was towards the end of his vice presidency and directly after that, in that, hey, no jury would want to convict him because they wouldn't believe he was competent to stand trial, essentially.
Yeah, that's the first time that I've ever heard someone in a position of power, right? Like, you imagine the CEO of WorldCom was on trial for fraud or whatever the fuck, and they're like, oh, he's incompetent to stand trial, but he stayed on as CEO of WorldCom after. That would be a problem, right? I mean, obviously.
Especially for the biggest job in the world, arguably.
Yeah, in fact, if he was COO when he was up for trial and then became the CEO, said, yes, we're going to give him a raise and a promotion.
It's nuts. So I'll go over some of the particulars here now that this is out fully here. So Joe Biden didn't remember what year his son Beau had died.
But who keeps track of that shit?
Who amongst us has not forgot what year you said?
Well, Hunter did. Hunter definitely kept track of it.
Well, that's because he was banging his wife.
Right, but he had to wait until Beau died to get in there. And
you don't know he waited.
That's true. We don't.
Might have been some crossover.
Yeah, Hunter's scruple level is always questionable. Right?
Oh, boy. He wasn't sure which years he served as vice president, which is odd to me,
I don't know, man. I don't know. What difference does it make?
The guy's had a lot of jobs. Let's be honest. Senator, vice president, that's about it.
Yeah, and president.
And president. Yeah.
So,
Well, he doesn't know about that one.
No.
And then according to her here, he had limitations in his recall during those interviews with Robert Hur. This document, this report that was released was 388 pages here, and they said they weren't pursuing charges. Now, hours later, Biden himself took things over, and he said, hey, dude, I did a press conference, and he's kind of pissed off about this, about his mental acuity. Biden also took, particular umbrage with the report's allegation that he'd forgotten Beau, and he said, how in the hell did he dare raise that?
So that's another interesting aspect of this report is that it was legally beneficial to Joe Biden, but politically very damaging to him because the explanations for why they were not going to prosecute him essentially do not reflect well on his ability to be president, right? And from what I've heard from the people who do have, get FaceTime with Joe Biden is that he is somewhat more sentient on a day-to-day basis talking to a person here, a person there, than he is when he's in the public eye or giving a speech. And that's actually not that surprising because there's a lot of public figures who kind of crack under the pressure or perform less well under the pressure of a formal press conference and things of that nature. Although I'm sure Joe Biden, at his age, being more sentient and more articulate than he is in these press conferences, is not a high bar to clear. So he gets very fiery and says, how dare this report suggest that I'm, some old drooling, dilapidated senior citizen who's drinking prune juice and feeding pigeons and shouldn't be president. I want to go show everybody that I'm as sharp as I ever was and that I deserve to be president. The attempt to do that did not go well, as you described.
Yeah, but I mean, then the source material for this are the interviews with her and his team, right? Which were not in the public. It was 4 people in a room, probably.
Right.
It was probably 8 people.
A while ago?
Yeah, it was a while back. Yeah. I mean, it was a couple years ago, a year and a half, maybe, I think.
I've got time blindness being in the studio every day, so I think it was 6 months, but as Delco likes to point out all the time, I'm usually wrong on that. So.
It was right. It was like days after the October 7th attacks in Israel. They made a point of mentioning that.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Oh, so it's pretty
not
recent.
Too long ago. Yeah, and a lot of hay's been made about Robert Hur, the special counsel who's a former U.S. attorney in Maryland, being a Republican, right? It's like, okay, well, Merrick Garland appointed him. So it raises the question, we have these juxtaposed ideas in the national discourse right now, like, oh, the government's incompetent, and also at the same time, that person will say the government is running these incredibly
elaborate schemes.
Yeah, elaborate schemes against us. Like, well, one of those two can be true, but they both can't be true, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Merrick Garland, who is a lapdog for the leftists in this country, 100%. What he's done at the DOJ is a goddamn disgrace. So it feels like this is a hit job by the left to try to get Biden out of the way, and that press conference after the fact fucking definitely made me think that.
Yeah, and I'll read some of the things he said at the press conference. He says,
before you read the actual stuff he said, the tone of it, I haven't seen the White House press corps the White House press team allow the press corps to go after him like that without pulling him off stage or having scripted questions to lead off or whatever, right? This is the first time you've seen a shooting gallery on this guy before.
Yeah, true. I've never seen that happen before. He even took a question from Peter Doocy from Fox.
That was the first question, wasn't it?
I was shocked. So was his statement regarding Beau. He says, frankly, when I was asked the question, I thought to myself, that wasn't any of their damn business. And then he continued on, adding that he carries with him a rosary that belonged to Beau, and his family holds a service for Beau every single Memorial Day. He said, I don't need anyone to remind me when he passed away. For any extraneous commentary, they don't know what they're talking about. It has no place in this report. And to that point, he might be right. What is asking the president about his kid dying have to do with documents hidden in a garage next to a dog bed?
Well, I mean, if you're assessing his mental capability, it's absolutely salient.
Gotcha.
But you're not necessarily inherently in this type of investigation. That's not inherently one of the aspects that you would
I mean,
pursue.
you would have to see the transcripts to see what led to that question, I would assume.
Right, because he could have asked him beforehand, how is your memory and how are things, and let's go over some basics.
Sure.
Yeah, or
big moments in your life.
Or Biden could have said, I don't remember 80 times in a row. And he goes, well, what do you remember?
Right.
Which would be a fair question, to be honest.
For sure.
But by the way, just to play both sides here, I think Trump, when he was questioned about the same stuff about his classified documents, said, I can't recall, or I don't remember 70 times, I think, something like that. And nobody really calls his memory into question. Every now and again, the media, legacy media, will try to fucking hit him on it, but no reasonable person really thinks he's losing it. He's pretty sharp.
No, and with both of these guys, truthfully, with documents like this for Biden and Trump, I highly doubt that they were the ones carrying the fucking boxes out of the White House.
Trump has never lifted anything over 25 pounds in his life.
And neither has Biden, which is why I think none of these cases, none of these cases should have ever gone forward.
Unless there's some evidence that I don't care about improper storage even. Unless there's some evidence that they were fucking giving the information to somebody else they shouldn't have, I do not fucking care about this.
I agree. But because Trump has been charged in a court of law and Biden has not here, that's why it's a big deal. Now, when Peter Doocy from Fox asked him to respond to the report describing him as a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory, Biden shot back, I'm well-meaning and I'm an elderly man and I know what I'm doing. I've been president. I put this country back on his feet. And then he joked to Doocy, if my memory is so bad, I let you speak.
I think I have maybe have that clip.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and play it if you got it.
I know there's some attention paid to some language in the report about my recollection of events. There's even reference that I don't remember when my son died. How in the hell dare he raise that? Frankly, when I was asked the question, I thought to myself, it wasn't any of their damn business. Let me tell you something. Some of you have commented. I wear, since the day he died, every single day, the rosary he got from Our Lady of... Every Memorial Day, we hold a service remembering him, attended by friends and family and the people who loved him.
Our Lady of the
I don't need anyone.
Roofie.
I don't need anyone to remind me when he passed away.
All right, sorry, that was annoying. They said that was
No,
the
that's
clip.
fine. Look, the whole thing was fucking bizarre.
Here you go. Here you go.
The special counsel said in his report is that one of the reasons you were not charged is because, in his description, you are a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory.
I'm well-meaning, and I'm an elderly man, and I know what the hell I'm doing. I've been president. I put this country back on its feet. I don't need his recommendation. It's totally out.
How bad is your memory, and can you continue as president?
My memory is so bad, I let you speak.
That's why they called Peter Ducey first, so he could get that one-liner out. That's the only real reason.
You think
right?
it's scripted?
Yeah, they had that one set up for sure.
Not saying that Ducey's involved necessarily, although it wouldn't surprise me. Fox is just as fucked as anybody else. But
Yeah.
Definitely, the White House press corps took a calculated risk right there. And they like Ducey's definitely going to talk some shit because he always talks shit. Right?
Sure. And by going first, at least you could remember it, and that you could script, and it would be easy enough for him to remember. He went on to say, "My memory is fine. Take a look at what I've done since I've become president." Now that we've seen, and it's been awful. I don't know if you want to take credit for that one. None of you thought I could pass any of the things that I got passed. What were they?
I mean,
What does he pass?
Jamming $1.4 trillion in unnecessary spending of COVID relief in his first year, which led to 8% inflation and, pretty much tanked the economy for the last 2.5 years. Yeah, he got that passed pretty nicely.
Yeah, that happens. And he says, how'd that happen? I guess I forgot what was going on. But then a few minutes later, and this is what everybody was talking about that went viral, Biden undercut the assurances while he answered a question about a ceasefire in Gaza, saying Mexico instead of Egypt when talking about the president there, and that went around the world, obviously, because that's a huge gaffe.
In that context, that is going to get highlighted highly. Nobody's going to forget that one particularly. But that, in terms of was this a hit job by the DOJ to expose more of the flaws of Joe Biden and put more pressure on him not to run in 2024? They didn't make him hold this press conference. He could have just let this one run through the news cycle. If he was smart, that's what he would have done.
Especially on a fucking Thursday.
Yeah,
just let it go.
But I truly believe he still thinks that he is a completely competent guy who's the best man for the same thing with Trump. They both think they're the best man for the job. I guarantee you they both truly believe that. Everyone always wants to speculate on these ulterior motives for these guys. Like, you don't become the most powerful person on earth, regardless of whether or not you think this person should be, without the ego satisfaction of believing you deserve to be in that position. And I think Joe Biden, for whatever he screws up, he still thinks it. So he thought he was going to nail this press conference.
I agree.
Well, it doesn't help that he's in a very Emperor's New Clothes situation too, right? Where, I mean, if you look through Twitter after that press conference last night, it was just, when any leftist gets COVID, they're like, I found out I got COVID. Thankfully, I'm vaxxed and boosted, and I'm listening to doctors' orders and following CDC guidelines. It's the same paragraph every time.
Thing, yeah.
If you watched were fucking around on Twitter right after his shit last night, it was hundreds of people saying the exact same thing. He's clearly competent, and look at all the things he's accomplished for this country. No details on exactly what he accomplished, right? But he's definitely accomplished things.
It seems like there's some of what you describe in the media covering for the Biden administration of the first couple years might be a Pyrrhic victory in that it worked for about 2.5 to 3 years, but seems to be getting exposed in the election year, particularly like the border. Like, everyone's like, oh my God, the border, we just figured out that we essentially have no southern border, and we've got terrorists and 85% males of fighting age coming through the southern border. Oh, we figured this out 2 weeks ago. I was like, no, we figured it's been going on for 3 years. Just nobody covered it, right?
And now you've got Stephen A. Smith and Michael Rappaport talking about it.
Yeah.
which is not good for the left, right? When
Not a
two
good
of your,
sign.
like, Rappaport is not a huge media figure anymore, but Stephen A. Smith is. He's got millions of people who listen to him on a daily basis. Now,
Sure.
I would guess that the vast majority of his audience is centrist or leans right, probably because sports people aren't leftists typically. But, you know, it definitely, anybody that's center right, that definitely validates them. Like, you know what? I am going to go vote for Trump this time.
Yeah, and you know, for me, I find it odd because the media for the first 3 years didn't cover his age or any of that shit. They refused and they said, "Oh, he's doing a great job" and everything else. I watched this on NBC News, and immediately afterwards, they posted this fucking stat on TV that said 62% of voters have major concerns that Biden doesn't have the mental and physical health to be president for a second term. And I was like, "Holy shit!" I mean, it was right after, and it was right there on the screen. Why are they going after him so hard if there isn't a candidate already waiting in the wings?
Listen, I think you go to a newsroom, you see that there's 8 people in a liberal newsroom or a business unit of that newsroom, and 6 to 7 of them are so adamant that, listen, everything's fine and we need to keep on running cover. And then there's 1 or 2 that are so concerned about it that, that Joe Biden's leading us down the path of Trump part 2, that they, I think that's just, this is just how humanity works. You get 8 people together in a room, 6 of them are going to take one perspective on it, a couple of them are going to take the other, unless there's just an absolutely tyrannical stranglehold around the newsroom. These people who want this one story getting out, they're gonna slip a few past the goalie.
Yeah, and then the final comments from Biden's lawyer this morning were, "We disagree with a number of the inaccurate and inappropriate comments in the special counsel's report. Nonetheless, the most important decision the special counsel made was that no charges are warranted, is firmly based on the facts and evidence."
Okay, as we've discussed, the law is not just what the law is, it's also about enforcement, and it's about determining how you interpret actions against what the scripted letter of the law is and what crimes need to be prosecuted at what levels. And to a certain extent, that's dependent on, did you prosecute similar behavior, right? And there's obviously going to be...
We call that common law, right? Like stuff that's been done before, you know what I mean?
Well,
Or I guess that would be case law too, but like common law is a little bit different in that it's based on, what do you call it? It's based on things that have already happened before, right? Like
Sure.
you've set a precedent.
What you're describing is the scripted letter of the law, and this is a little bit more prosecutorial discretion in terms of what do you decide to prosecute.
But there's no book on this that says. I mean, we have sentencing guidelines for sure, but there's not prosecutorial guidelines.
And there's always nearly always flexibility in that. So determining, and we talked about this last time I was here, because right after that, the New York business records case against Trump, and was like, okay, this is clearly bullshit because nobody has ever prosecuted anybody under this theory of law unless it's been in regards to some sort of business fraud claim. Because if not, the fraud was the major crime, and then the false administrative input was the supplemental crime, right? And nobody's only prosecuted one except against Trump. So now when you've got Trump being prosecuted for mishandling of classified information, and he's got some defenses, and you haven't really seen other similar activities prosecuted, but they're trying to prosecute Trump, and then you've got Biden with something that you could find some distinguishing factors and say, well, listen, they asked Trump for the records back, for the documents back so many times, and if he hadn't thumbed his nose, they wouldn't be prosecuting him.
Yeah, but they asked Obama for the records back, and he's got 33 fucking thousand pages of them still, right?
And he hasn't done anything
Chicago,
with
right?
those. So,
Sure. So once you,
but every president, by the way, not just, I mean, right and left.
This is
every single
retarded.
president has documents.
Sure. So when you're comparing the two situations to one in which they are prosecuting and one in which they're not, I mean, any sentient person it's not gonna pass the smell test. It's gonna look really bad. And as I just said a moment ago, they've been able to get away with so much BS. It might have they might have overlearned the lesson from how much stuff they can get away with, that this is not gonna pass muster with people.
Yeah, especially considering like the biggest determining or the biggest differential factor between these two, in my opinion, is that Trump was president and Biden was senator and vice president. One of those offices has the ability to classify or declassify whatever the fuck you want just by saying so, right? And the vice president and senator do not have that right. It's a very different thing. So, it's odd to me. It would be odd to me if this case against Trump now doesn't get thrown out pretty soon, or at least taken off the docket, which is what happened in D.C., right?
Yeah, it's
Like
very.
this is the Florida one. This is the records one. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, it's very strange. Down in Miami is the one you're talking about. It's very strange here because as this continues to churn along closer to the election, I'm looking at one of the responses from the White House official. It says they did find out about the report before the release, so they were able to craft some form of strategy. However, in regards to his memory and being unfit to be president, they couldn't do anything about it. And the official statement from a White House official was, "It is what it is."
What else are they going to say, man? I mean, because it's a tough thing to defend, because if you have to be defending the president's mental acuity and whether or not he's fit to even stand trial for any, I mean, you've already lost. Once you already have to defend that, you're already on the back foot. You can't really play offense on that one.
Yeah, and it's I mean, we had this with Reagan too. We just didn't have a fucking 24-hour news cycle back
Right,
then.
right.
We were
It's
still
almost
using,
identical.
We were still using telex back then, though. There wasn't fucking cable news.
Sure, but also
Yeah.
the first Reagan administration, there weren't many questions about his mental acuity. He'd
No.
already established himself as someone that like had won the respect of enough people, and then like landslide, re-election in 1984. So, but I see the similarity for sure.
Yeah, but to that point, I mean, he's clearly fucked in the head. I mean, like I don't. I don't understand it. I really don't understand why the left is even pretending to send him back out for another round here. It's like you're fucking corner man for a boxer, and he's just getting his brains dug out, dude. And you're like, fuck it.
Dan, I'll tell you why I think because people said a similar. Obviously, he's deteriorated further, but people said the same shit in 2020, and he overperformed. Saying he's benefiting from previous outpacing previous low expectations.
But did he actually outpace them, or did they just hide him? Right? I guess the result is the same, right?
But he did good. Listen, I don't care what anybody says, and I was not a Joe Biden supporter, and in 2020. But in comparison to what people predicted for his performance
for
during
that second debate, especially,
he was fine. I was like, when you say, "Hey, this guy's going to be a drooling imbecile and drop his pants on TV," and he actually performs relatively adequate. I mean, do the math.
But now he's turning down Super Bowl interviews, which is like that happens every single year.
Yeah,
it's like a second State of the Union almost, right? It happens every fucking year.
And for you, with your show and everything else, I know you cover a lot of stuff in Hollywood and California. The next question will obviously go to Gavin Newsom. Have you heard anything about him running out there? Because we look at it from a gambling perspective.
Okay.
MyBookie.com, promo code Drinkin Bros doubles that first deposit to $1,000. It's one of our sponsors.
Sure.
He's currently third.
Yeah, but look at his comp. Okay.
Betting odds in Vegas have him at number 3 right now.
At 16 cents. Come on. I mean, just because he's number 3, still way behind everybody else. I've been extremely, and I put myself out there, I've been very adamant that there is absolutely zero chance, other than a slight possibility that Joe Biden is actually dead by Election Day, that Gavin Newsom will not be the nominee. Go look at Gavin Newsom's national polling numbers. They're not good.
Well, he fucking sucks. Look, I lived in that state for 15 years. He drove it into the goddamn ground.
I could go on for the night. Could swamp the entire show with the negatives on fucking that greasy toad. Anyways, his polling numbers are not good. All this stuff that he did recently over the past, everyone said, "Oh, the DNC's trying to promote him nationally." No, Gavin Newsom was trying to promote himself. All this media that he did about buying billboards in Texas, going to China. Do you think the DNC told him to do that? No, he just went and fucking did it. He took it upon himself. Number 2, reason.
I actually, by the way, I hate to interrupt you. I didn't know the answer to that. So we had talked about it on this show for a few months.
He did it all himself.
He did?
Yes.
Okay, because I couldn't figure it out. I thought for sure the DNC was sending him out, paying for all these trips, paying for the billboards.
No, Soros probably foot the bill for a lot of it because he contributes quite a bit to his campaign.
No, he didn't need to. He didn't need to. I'm telling you, one of the reasons he stopped doing it is because Gavin Newsom's poll numbers in California dipped about 12% because everyone was pissed off about it, and a couple of his Democratic advisors in California that had told him, "Don't do this. It's not worth it." Kind of let it slip that he took it upon himself, and it was self-funded, and he just he thought, "Wait a second, I can gain Democratic clout about trolling the red state governors and doing all this stuff." It was all news. Everyone's like, "Oh, the DNC's carting him out." No, Gavin Newsom was carting himself out.
So he tried to reverse Rick Perry it, right?
Yeah.
And then going against DeSantis is the most socially awkward dude I've seen in a while, right? and he lit Gavin Newsom the fuck up.
Yes.
And you saw the substance versus style debate on stage right there, which might be a 2028 matchup that we're going to see. Gavin Newsom has no chance of winning an election against that dude.
People are overestimating his political skill and acuity significantly. Yeah. Also, you think they're going to leapfrog Kamala?
That's my point. We talked about this yesterday.
No chance. Yeah. No chance they leapfrog Kamala.
No, well, the question is this. I know the gambling sites say that Newsom's in third, but is Newsom a strong enough candidate, particularly amongst suburban women and amongst progressives, to leapfrog Kamala Harris? And because Sarah Sanders is going to be Trump's VP. More. Oh,
you think so?
Yes. Okay. I'm 99% sure of that.
Really?
She's the only one that makes any sense. The other one on the list is Kristi Noem, and she's banging
Tim Scott.
She's banging his fucking no.
Okay.
What does Tim Scott win for?
He's black.
In support of that point, I think Trump is, because he's more socially liberal, he's conscious of the liabilities around the abortion issue. And
Sarah Sanders is the leader on that.
So the case for him choosing a woman is that he instinctually believes abortion screwed the Republicans in the midterms and wants to choose a woman to kind of head that off.
But you can't choose the other top candidate is Kristi Noem, and you can't choose her because she's fucking his old campaign manager.
And Sarah Sanders, I believe, Bob, wasn't she the one? Who
6
said,
weeks.
Was it 6 weeks for her, or was it a full abortion ban?
I think it's a full abortion ban in Arkansas.
I'll
double check.
Yeah, check it out real quick.
She's evangelical, like she's hardcore Jesus.
But I've spoken to people from her team about this, and my recommendation was, it's fine that you did that in your state because that was the will of the people in your state. But if you're a real conservative, if you're a real centrist or libertarian person or something like that, your attitude federally should be, and you got to make this very fucking clear if you want to win this election, that this is a state's issue. It's not in the Constitution, so it's not my fucking business what states do. Mm-hmm. And if she doesn't say that, then choosing her is all for naught. They'll lose.
And here's why I wanted to bring up Kamala here, because this just dropped. So the reason why they could potentially leapfrog her approval rating as of, 20 minutes ago is at 28%. And they said that's squarely an issue in the 2024 race.
It's definitely an issue, but it's bad optics.
That doesn't matter because you have to play out the practical scenario of if you leapfrog her and what the 28% who do support her and her people do in response, and they know that she will poison the well if they leapfrog her.
Okay, because NBC News, same thing right after the show was over, or the interview was over, they revealed that 53% of voters view her negatively.
Absolutely, all true. Everybody knows she's been exposed, right? And I could tell you about how I had a cup of coffee, somewhat involved with political consultants that were involved in launching her political career, and it's not complicated. They were like, it was about 2010, and they're like, oh, we need a female Obama. Oh, who looks like the good female Obama? Boom, Kamala Harris. That's why she's a politician. End of story.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah, I mean, but like. Look at the platform of the recent Democratic Party in terms of racial and gender politics, and saying they went both for vice president and Supreme Court justice. We have to choose a black woman, and they're going to go leapfrog the first black female VP for Gavin fucking Newsom in this scenario. They know that the 28% that do support her will scream bloody murder and are going to make it very uncomfortable and make it even more difficult for Gavin Newsom to win. And when you put that up against, like, say what you want about Joe Biden, Democrats did pretty good in the midterms, and everyone was still talking about how much of a brain-dead idiot Joe Biden was.
That was the abortion thing.
But that was the abortion thing. I don't think it was Democrats.
It's not just one thing, man. It's not just one thing.
It's never just one thing, but
you look at some of that.
Midterms are about turnout, right?
There was,
and women were pissed off.
Women are not going to stop being pissed off, and also some of the Brian Kemp, Mike DeWine, strict anti-abortion laws, both in states that are a little bit blue, or at least swing of blue.
Georgia, yeah.
Both crushed. Both crushed. So it's like abortion.
But he went anti-Trump, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's been anti-Trump since the 2020. But Georgia's a weird. That's my state. Sure. So like, it has never been blue until the last fucking 4 years, and like, it's nuts to see.
Absolutely, but in terms of was abortion the sole single point of failure, I don't believe it was, and everyone still said people were still even with that, people were predicting a red wave up until a few weeks before, and everyone said, oh, look at the economy, look at inflation was much worse. There was even a worse sheen around Joe Biden back then, and it didn't. And Joe Biden can sit there and say, look at everything you guys said about me and about how supposedly poisonous I would be to our results, and in 2022 they weren't. So he still has that argument.
Well, on that, so if you're looking at crosstabs here in the polling, they've lost the left has lost about 20% of their black base. in the last 6 years, right? Basically since Obama left, but definitely in the last 4 years. They've lost about 18% in the Latinx space as well. And they've made that up in suburban white women, right? And that's like that's why I don't think there's any way you can leapfrog Kamala Harris unless she specifically bows out and endorses somebody. And I don't know what that costs. Yeah. You know what I mean? Boy. But she can't win a general election federally. There's no fucking way.
No, I don't think so either.
They're in a bind. I mean, the best thing they can do is run Biden probably, hope they win, and then fucking let him die, and she fucking becomes president.
Yeah.
Then they get that fucking card. They got to suffer a little bit with it because she's going to suck at that job. But they get that card for the first female president, first female colored president, blah, blah, blah. And they can play that in future elections.
For sure. And I'm with you on that. Now, here's the other part. And as a lawyer, I wanted to ask you about this one. Okay. Because a lot of people, after the gaffes he made last night and then earlier in the week, because he also confused the president of France and Germany as well, were asking to invoke the 25th Amendment. Now, obviously, that's never happened in the history of our country. I know they brought it up during Trump. Is that even something realistic?
It has sort of been used a lot, just not in a way that's public, right? So anytime the president goes under general anesthesia, technically the 25th Amendment is invoked, right?
Sure.
And the line of succession for like 6 hours, whatever the fuck.
Right.
Sure, but that's for physical infirmity.
Sure,
not
100%.
for mental incompetence.
Yeah.
And don't you need, given the pretty much split Senate, split Congress, and the division in this country, no, because it's same like it would be the same issues as another amendment to the Constitution. You need too many people, and you're not going to get that type of solidarity from the members of Congress at this point.
No.
People love to talk
prayer,
about no chance.
So what is your prediction then for 2024? Who do you got?
Man. But previously, when there's still a chance that they were going to get some of these Trump trials done before the election, I was like, oh, they're just going to put him in jail. And then there's going to be the real crazy scenario was, okay, they're going to he's going to be incarcerated, and the question is whether or not they allow him to out of jail to be inaugurated so he can become president and pardon himself. And who knows, maybe that's what leads to an actual violent insurrection of some sort. Since the cases are not going to happen before the election, man, it's looking pretty good for Trump. I mean, I
thought that way in 2020 though, and I was wrong.
Ross, I think you had a couple blind spots in 2020, man. The anti-Trump energy was exponentially higher in 2020.
Yeah.
You could feel it.
I don't think it was just from the left either. I think centrists and libertarian people were fucking pissed off that he banned bump stocks, that he let Fauci run wild on this country. They shut shit down.
There's a specific, I know some Miami Cubans, for instance, friends of mine, those historically very Republican voting bloc. I remember right before the election in 2020, I talked to two of them. One was still like, listen, I can't stand Trump. He needs to shut his mouth, but I don't care. I'm voting for him because I prefer his policies. The other one was a guy who votes very reliably Republican generally, and he said, you know something? I'm sorry, I'm not voting for this guy. The way that he thinks that the rules don't apply to him, that he talks all this shit, I just won't. People underestimated how many of that second guy were around in 2020. In 2024, I think with Biden being more in the spotlight and his failings and Trump, people kind of having a little nostalgia for Trump, the likelihood that the second guy there votes for Trump is higher. And that's why I think he wins.
Okay. And then, because for me, I think I know why I got it wrong, just me personally. I have never seen anyone run a campaign from a basement, not do any public events, not do any speaking events, like anything. I've never seen it in my lifetime.
Yeah, but nobody saw what happened in 2020 in anyone's lifetime.
In regards to the pandemic, right.
Yeah.
But still, Trump was out there.
Well, none of that shit was real, though. But yeah, it doesn't.
The circumstances were sui generis.
Yeah.
There was no other. You could not compare it to any other election ever. And you can, as I was saying right before with the debates, he overperformed in the debates. Like, if you watch that first, in particular, the first debate, you're like, oh my God, Donald Trump is completely unhinged. And this Joe Biden guy, he's not the sharpest character I've ever seen, but he stuck to script and he stuck, whoever was running, feeding him his campaign lines and his Twitter feed was good. It was just very solemn, straightforward. He was like the football analogy, just handing off the ball three yards in a cloud of dust and grinded it out.
Now, the person that nobody's talking about at all, and he's seemed to turn invisible here in the last couple months, is RFK Jr. Why? Because according to
Because
polls,
there's
and I
no-
don't believe in the polls, but
Yeah.
his numbers were at 22%.
There's no pathway for him.
But I think he's going to get a meaningful portion of the vote that is going to be impressive in the historical context of third-party candidates.
Which side is that going to eat from?
That's hard to say.
That's it's what makes him fascinating, right? Usually a third-party candidate, you're like, oh, you know who he's impacting. It was like, because I know a lot of, particularly in LA, I don't know if this is true other places. There's a lot of LA, California, formerly blue voters that literally, based purely on the vaccine, turned right. Were red-pilled, literally just off the vaccine. Those are people who would right now probably vote for Trump, but they so love RFK because of his approach towards public health and the vaccine and whatnot that they're going to vote RFK instead. However, you've also got a lot of people that just like the handful of RFK Jr. Policies that are kind of general stock libtard policies, which he has quite a few of, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a tough call.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, amongst people who have flipped, I agree, he's got a shot. People have flipped blue to red, but people who have been red, unless they're fucking idiots, would never vote for that guy.
Yeah, that's true. I agree with that.
He's tried to like court libertarians recently. Like, yeah, we're talking about libertarians, about me running for them. There's not a libertarian bone in your body, sir. I'm sorry. You don't even understand what the concept of libertarianism. You're an environmentalist wacko that wants to fucking ban assault weapons. And I know that he said that he isn't against banning guns, but what he did say is if the Congress votes for it, that he would sign it. No, there's a reason we have checks and balances, motherfucker. And that is so one individual, at least, if not an entire House of Congress or a block of the party using a filibuster or something, is able to stop unconstitutional shit from happening. The fact that you said that you would just sign an unconstitutional bill because it passed with a majority is fucking stupid. Why would you even say that? It's because he's trying to play both sides of the fence, which means he has no fucking principles, in my opinion.
I think he's got principles. I just don't think he's that smart. In terms of some of these aspects, I think he's not, he likes his topics. His topics are health and public health and food and everything, and wellness and everything in regards to the vaccine and whatnot. I don't think he's paying that much attention to the things that you hold dear, right? And so that's why he has some less than admirable qualities there. But he's
also said he supports the Green New Deal in public 3 separate times. He said it. I had to look it up because some asshole on Twitter was talking shit, and I was like, no, he said specifically he supports the Green New Deal. He said those words in that order.
Well, he's still a legacy libtard. Let's be honest.
Yeah. It's like, come on, man. I mean, it's like he doesn't understand. He's not qualified to be a fucking president of anything, frankly.
RFK Jr.?
Yes.
Yeah, but we got a grade on a curve.
Who the fuck is?
Yeah, we got a grade on a curve these days.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, 2 weird fucking breaking news stories here that just dropped. O.J. Simpson has cancer. He's denying reports they've entered hospice.
With
the fucking juice, dude. He's all over.
Oh my God.
He's on the desk right there.
What is
We
he,
got the signed
76?
helmet.
Yeah,
He's got the
76.
Speak
thing.
that into existence. Holy shit.
Yeah, man. Fuck, dude. What if we lose the juice? What if Jimmy Carter outlives O.J. Simpson? Fucking A, bro.
Yeah, what are the betting odds
What
on
a
that?
world.
Yeah.
Jimmy Carter's never going to die.
These guys have been all in on Jimmy Carter from day one. I want to give them their credit. Bob and Delco.
His caretakers put 2.5 pounds of raw peanuts up his ass every morning.
You have to.
He'll never fucking die.
Do they ground him up? Or you put him in full shell?
You go in whole. Yeah.
You go in whole shell here. And then this is an odd one, and this is another legal question for you here. Jack Smith just filed a motion here in the Miami case regarding the documents, ironically, that Trump's lawyers are trying to ask for unredacted documents to be turned over, which lawyers for Jack Smith want to block. They're worried about witness tampering, what might be on those. But if you're giving somebody redacted documents, wouldn't you have the right to understand what is on them to argue against them? I'm really confused.
It's a Mexican standoff. I mean, this happens often, right? It's similar. This is the type of thing similarly that happens with claims of sexual crimes, civil cases around sexual crime allegations.
Usually it's a Jane Doe or something like that.
And I mean, not to get too deep into it, but even a case that I was once involved in when, one side knew the identity of the other party, and in the original complaint, they had named her as Jane Doe, and they said that, if you ever challenge this, we are going to win the motion that justifies us not naming her. But there was pressure. They knew that they could put litigation pressure on the claimant by naming her publicly, so they named her in the fucking answer. Right?
Oh, wow.
And and before she could even, it put enough pressure on her that before they could even file a motion to, for sanctions against that, she already settled it. Right? So these things, the point here is that these things do not operate necessarily in accordance with these very black and white, fine line letters of the law, right? Sometimes it's just litigation strategy and might equals right. And in terms of this, if I'm Jack Smith and where another place that Trump shoots himself in the foot, but hey, this is just how he is, it's easier to make the case that you need to keep these documents redacted because Trump might go try to screw with a witness because he's so loud and because he shoots his mouth off. So that's the case they're going to make, and then Trump's going to make the case that, listen, we need full transparency for the legal process to play out in with integrity, and you need to provide unredacted documents, and that's going to be the battle's going to be right there.
Yeah, there's another bend to that too, and it's you can talk about January 6th and the way the Department of Justice has handled that vis-a-vis the 200 to 300 federal agents that was cruising around that are unnamed, and all that information is redacted. None of the people I know who have gone to court for any of this shit has gotten even a whiff of that stuff. They won't even admit that until the second version when they were tearing down the J6 committee here recently. Nobody knew that it was confirmed that there were 275 at least federal agents on the ground out there instigating shit. We saw this weird stuff with the bomb near Kamala Harris's office.
Yeah.
That they were just like, oh, that looks like a bomb. Why not? And just standing next to it and shit. I don't know if you've been near bombs. I have. Been blown up a couple times, as a matter of fact. You don't stand next to them.
No, you sure
That's
don't.
not great. But anyways, yeah. That's
Kamala Harris might.
she's dumb as shit. But that's a part of it as well. Is like the government doesn't want to give up. They'll claim that it exposes methods and what's the other one? Methods and there's another word. I can't remember what it is.
By the way, as this story keeps continuing here, you are correct. So it says that Smith argued that the filings made public would disclose the identities of the witnesses prepared to testify against Trump.
Correct.
So it is the witnesses. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if there was something in the papers themselves that were describing.
Yeah, but don't you have the right to face your accuser in the United States?
This depends on whether or not the accuser is the United States government here. Right.
Well, yeah, but they're calling witnesses.
No, on the stand, they're going. Yeah, they're going to get to cross-examine them on the stand. The question is whether or not they get to, there's a reason to redact it if these people get called.
But how do you even prepare your cross? I know
not knowing who the witnesses are.
Right.
Yeah.
No. Once these people might not be called as witnesses, right?
Sure.
So these are people that you could tamper with them ahead of time before they've officially agreed to be witnesses, officially been demanded, they've been subpoenaed to be witnesses, and once again, I'm not saying that these are accurate claims, but this would be what Jack Smith's case is.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
it's interesting. He's down there poking around when his case in D.C. got removed from the docket. That's pretty interesting.
It is.
It's like, why are you even down there, dude?
Well, they're trying to get something in, like you were saying earlier, get something in before the election.
Yeah.
Because if they don't, there is a good shot of him winning.
Yeah.
So, he goes on to state here that revelation of these witnesses' identities or the substance of the interviews with the FBI dangerously risks them exposing them to the public, and that Trump has a well-documented pattern of threats, harassment, and intimidation, which, look, he'll go scorched earth on fucking truth or whatever it is.
Exactly.
I don't know that I've ever heard him threaten a witness.
No, but judges, he's called them dummies and normal shit.
They will try to mischaracterize him just maligning them as him threatening them.
Well, words are violence, so
yeah,
In this day and age.
They sure are. Still thinking about the juice, though, man. Fuck. What if we lose the juice right before the Super Bowl? Do they play? Do they even play the game?
I'm just hoping for a deathbed confession.
That would be awesome.
He just,
if he videoed it.
He just looks right into camera like Jim from The Office and he winks, then dies. That would be the best thing of all time.
They play the Office theme song.
You know he's not going to go quietly into the night. So
no.
yeah, it could be.
Or if they played the Curb music right at the end there.
That'd
be great, man.
No, he's just like, can't believe I dropped my glove.
Right, or do you make a video? This is like I'm being totally serious about this. Do you make a video, drop it on like an OnlyFans thing or whatever, and then have everybody go and be like, all right, here's the fucking answers that you guys wanted to know?
Yeah, that would be on brand. But the other thing is, I think he's a true sociopath. I think in his mind, he's convinced himself he didn't do it. In his mind, he's like, he doesn't think he did.
But he did that interview with that woman from ABC a couple years after, and like she came into his hotel room and he was like, or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
Like he did. It's like, oh my God, dude.
Because think about it. Go look at the guy go see the public persona of O.J. Simpson, you know, from the 70s and 80s through his pop
I'm
culture
not black
career.
on O.J., yeah.
And then go see what the police reports are about the domestic violence. This is truly, if ever there is a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde human being on the face of this planet, it is O.J. Simpson. I think he's got a multiple personality thing where he can literally block it out.
Good for him, dude. Yeah. Good for him, because he was a great running back and he was awesome in the Naked Gun series.
Yeah. Incredible. Nordberg.
Great sideline reporter, beloved.
And then Hertz.
You got to block that out. Yeah.
Compartmentalize the juice.
Hertz commercials.
Another Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, you could say Putin, right? The show that he put on yesterday.
Did you guys watch the Putin Tucker Carlson interview?
Some of it, yeah.
Yeah, I watched it last night. D'Anthony, we'll start with you. What were your thoughts on it?
Well, first of all, he's smarter than any U.S. politician, except for maybe Thomas Massey, who's a literal rocket scientist. He's got an engineering degree from MIT. It's hard to make that case, right? But as far as history goes and shit like that, that's what I would have expected a conversation with Ben Franklin to sound like, frankly, right? Just a very smart, educated man. I'm not sure I don't know about Russian history, so I don't know if everything he said was accurate or not. I haven't heard anybody refute. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, this is a propagandized version of Russian history. I'm like, okay, well, tell me exactly where he got it wrong.
Right.
Because I don't know that he did. And it seems like most of what he said was true. And it's also true that Ukraine is not a real country, right? It's a hodgepodge of Kazakh, Polish, Russian, whatever the fuck else. That part's true.
The question is whether or not what he said about it being an advent of the Bolsheviks, I don't know whether or not that's true. Because also what's been notable, a lot of the commentary about his interview was, oh, wait, he's never made that argument before.
Yeah. So that's new, and maybe like he also hinted at his real argument a couple times. But if you remember when this war kicked off, I said he wants Donbass and that's it. And that's what he said now, right? 3 years later, or 2 years later. That's what he wants for sure. And certainly it is true that 65% of that Donbass region is Russian, right? There's no question about that. Everybody knows that. It's also true, and I guess this technically is debatable, but in my opinion, from what I've read and people I know and that work in government intelligence, it's definitely true that the United States government overthrew a pro-Russian government in 2014.
Absolutely.
There's no question in my mind that happened. So, and the reason they did that is because, what the fuck was the guy's name?
Did they overthrew?
Victor
Yukonovich.
Yukonovich. He was probably going to associate. So one thing he definitely did was he broke away from the EU. There were negotiations for Ukraine to join the EU, right? Mm-hmm. Which Russia clearly is going to stop, right? They have to. You can't let that happen.
Right.
I mean, when Russia tried to fucking settle down in Cuba, it was almost a goddamn nuclear war. Mm-hmm. And we think that him invading Ukraine over us pushing into that country is somehow not going to instigate a conflict. Of course it is. Now, all that being said, I still don't think invading Ukraine and giving up 500,000 people on both sides was the right way to solve this. Now, he goes into a lot of detail about how he approached the West about wanting to join NATO. I don't know how much I believe that bullshit, to be honest. But how he wanted to stop this before it ever got started, how he, in two separate occasions, once before the invasion and then once later on, I think in Stockholm, where he had convinced Ukraine, like, hey, let's fucking quit this shit. We're going to keep our current territory and that'll be the end of it. And Boris Johnson came in and said, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to get that territory and Crimea back, right? So clearly the West has made this worse. There's no question in my mind about that. But everything you hear from Putin, like if you're trying to rationalize his behavior and shit, do not forget that he was a colonel in the fucking KGB. Yeah. He is a fucking professional liar, one of the best of all time probably, right? Mm-hmm. So let's not fanboy over this just because he's exposing how corrupt our country is, and he's completely right about that. You cannot explain to me the difference ethically between us invading Iraq and him invading Ukraine. There's no fucking difference between those two. You can't explain away our policy on Julian Assange and Edward Snowden and then complain that he's got a Wall Street Journal guy in prison. Because our policy is to fucking put those two dudes in jail for the rest of their goddamn lives.
Yep.
Just for exposing government corruption. And like, oh, well, fucking Russia will throw you out of a fucking window. Epstein killed himself, right? Do we really believe that shit? It's like, come on, man. Assholes in power are assholes in power. This is the argument I make domestically. Forget about this left-right shit. Aristocracies will fucking dominate people. They will extract labor and wealth until it all goes away, right? And that is true everywhere else. Putin is a little more bold and brash about it because they're a machismo culture in Russia still. We're not. We're a bunch of bitches now. So we see that and we're like, oh, he's just openly saying that? And that's why people hated Trump here so much, by the way. Because he just says, like, fuck you, I'm going to do what I want.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All that said, I thought Tucker did a pretty good job. He did seem a little like a lapdog in certain cases. But he did push back a few times, which I was surprised by, frankly, because I thought it was going to be a lot more softball stuff.
Well, one of the key points that you made last week here on the show was that this would be definitely dictated by Putin and or Russian officials, especially the edit and the questions and all that other stuff.
Well, they said there was no edit.
Right. Which
it didn't seem like there was.
And
I don't think he wants to edit. Putin wants to say what he wants to say.
Yeah.
He doesn't.
He thinks he has nothing to hide.
He doesn't. But I think in the contract with the no edit was simply because so Putin could tell that half-hour fucking story about the history of Russia. Because let's face it, in having a podcast the same way as him, I'd cut that because as a viewer and as a listener of it, because I had it on in the background and on my television there as I was working on my computer. The first half hour is rough, man. Like, I don't need a history lesson. Like, that's...
Well, I enjoyed it. I actually thought it was a great debate tactic.
Sure,
well, but you're one of those people, though, that is in an upper echelon of thinking, and that's... I mean, look, for anything history related, it's hard to get people involved in it.
Yeah, but Ross, he's not, and this is what I think is uncolored a lot of thinking and a lot of mischaracterization of the American approach towards Vladimir Putin. He's not just talking to Americans; he's talking to Russians.
Yeah,
he's talking to his own people. And like as to Dan's point about why they have different standards and a different Overton window in Russia. Russia has about 9 years of experience in democracy in its history, as opposed to us, who we don't have much experience without it. And the only 9 years of democracy, the only 9 years where they didn't have a tyrannical, totalitarian government, did not go very well for them. Okay, they're like, there's no problem. They have no guardrails against. There are no taboos about being ruled by an iron fist in Russia. They just have a completely different historical experience.
And it's not settled territory yet. Like we feel like the United States is settled territory, and it is to a large degree, right? We have civil strife here and there, but we don't have Chechens, we don't have Polish, we don't have fucking Ukrainians breaking off and shit like that. There's a Texas, like Texit, whatever the fuck.
But it's nothing like what they have.
It's like we don't have gunfights over Texas leaving the country. They have gunfights over Chechnya leaving, over fucking Ukraine leaving, so on and so forth, right? And that's been the case for some time now. So we see this, it's just Western-centric viewpoint. We're so myopic with this bullshit where we think everything gets settled every 4 years, and it just doesn't work that way in most of the fucking world, man.
And just because they're white doesn't mean they're Western. And then that's never been,
fair enough, too.
They've never been a Western society.
No. Someone made a really interesting point about Russia just historically, because like think about it now, mass communications, telephone, industrial revolution, like trying to govern one country that's really big is doable in this day and age for a variety of reasons. Russia was this big way the fuck before there was a telephone. Do you know how Russia was by far the biggest country in the world, at least the Western, any notion of the Western world, before there was any types of like the land mass of Russia was back when like there wasn't any country that was even 1/8 the size. It's like a very interesting experience to think about that for Russia. So like there's something going on there, and in terms of like how, and that's the reason why when people were expecting Tucker and Putin to agree on everything, it was like because Tucker's thinking about everything through the prism of him being critical of the American governing class and whatnot. And sure, that'll cross over with what Putin's saying a little bit. But Putin had different objectives. Like what he's trying to communicate is not just, your American politicians suck and I was right. Like I'm right, but for the X, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G reason.
Yeah, and some of the really interesting parts, like he said straight up that when Clinton invited him here to the U.S., Bill Clinton, that Putin expressed his desire to join NATO. He's like, we would be really open to that. And Clinton said he would go back. This is at Camp David. He said he would go back and talk to his people about it, whatever. Like, you're the fucking president, dude. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you are the
But he
people.
said he would go back and talk to his people, and then came back and told Putin that that's not possible. I don't know if I believe that or not. I mean, maybe it's true and maybe it's not. There's no evidence for that, to be honest.
Bill would be able to confirm it, or
he's the second biggest liar in the history of the fucking world if Putin's the biggest, right? I don't know what to think about that, though. I mean, it would make sense for Russia to do that, frankly.
Well, that was such a strange period for Russia, right? Because it was still underneath. It was still in the period where, okay, American financiers were going in, helping out who had Boris Berezovsky or Khodorkovsky or whoever had the most machine guns. Like, oh, okay, great, we'll finance your purchase of this $4.5 billion mineral mine for $150 million, so you can get super rich and I can get super rich, and the U.S. and Russia are completely intertwined. And that was all before Putin came in and said, okay, that's all over. Anyone who made money, you get to. You went to the oligarch. I don't know how familiar everybody is with this and how Vladimir Putin's original activities as president of Russia, but he came in and said, okay, you oligarchs who did that, buy the $4 billion mine for $150 million. Keep your money as long as you don't challenge me politically, and I won't prosecute you for anything you did back then. And then Khodorkovsky and Berezovsky were the only two who challenged him. He threw Khodorkovsky in jail for God knows how long. Berezovsky got exiled and was in London, and that's it. And that's one of the reasons he's very popular in Russia, because the Russians were very supportive of him doing that.
Yeah.
Right. And everyone forgets that. So that was the period during which he's claiming Clinton was talking about Russia joining the NATO or and westernizing. So that was a completely different universe.
Yeah.
What were the views on this? Just out of curiosity, and again for the listeners, we do record this on Friday afternoons. You know the views on Twitter last
I don't know about his website. I mean,
for Tucker, because it was on
Twitter. It was like 141 the last time I checked.
141 million.
Yeah.
Okay. Because the biggest question I had was how many Americans got past the first half hour. Because again, the first half hour was a history lesson. Like, full disclosure, even I checked out, and like I knew we were going to do a show about it, so I kept it on in the background. I think it was maybe 30-something minutes in where I finally got a question that I wanted to hear, which was, will this war end? And Putin's response was, if the U.S. had stopped donating weapons to Ukraine, the war would be over in 2 weeks. Do you guys believe that?
Yes.
I believe some aspect of that Vladimir Putin, I don't think Vladimir Putin has massive ambitions with this war. His ambitions were to chip off a little bit of like Eastern Ukraine, a couple strategic pieces, like there's one port that I think he wanted. Had they just said like, listen,
and they wanted to fortify the water supply through Crimea as well.
Yes, they cough up those two pieces, he would have ended the war. Yes, but we saw an opportunity,
and they were going to, by the way, in Stockholm last year. Ukraine was ready to do that, and Boris Johnson talked them out of it. That's been made public by other Ukrainian officials as well. That's not just coming from Putin.
Okay.
Like, we know that as a matter of fact, I think the Twitter files exposed some of that shit too.
I think so,
Just because somebody was posting it and Twitter was censoring it for some reason. I can't imagine why they would censor that.
Yeah, strange, right? Now the next obvious question comes: Will Tucker interview Zelensky?
I don't think Zelensky would take that interview.
Take that interview.
No shit. He takes everything though.
No.
Because in his world,
he hasn't been on Fox News, has he? Maybe he has. I mean, Fox is pretty liberal.
I don't know.
Too,
I don't know that they've asked him.
The milieu or the brand around Zelensky is of the report that, oh my God, Tucker Carlson is a traitor who's a Russian asset, and how dare he interview Vladimir Putin? I don't think if Zelensky interviewed with Tucker, it would run contrary to the illusion that they're trying to foment, that Tucker Carlson is some Putin-sympathizing Russian agent.
And it would also indirectly validate the interview with Putin too, right? Which I don't think he wants to do. And also, Zelensky's weak as fuck. He got talked into a peace deal, and then he got talked out of it by another head of state. And it's probably because he's making money, frankly. I mean, he certainly doesn't.
Sure.
He certainly doesn't give a shit about his people to stay in this conflict. Just let people die for a war that he cannot win. Right? He can't. As bad as Russia is at fighting wars, they're just bigger, man. They're fucking 80 times bigger.
And they can wait it out.
Yeah. But yeah, there's no way he would ever do that interview.
If I'm Tucker, though, I definitely put the ask in. So
He
that
did.
way it seems like it's both sides.
He did during the preamble to this show. He said, "We haven't interviewed Zelensky. We would love to. I hope he returns our calls." He said that.
Oh, no shit. Okay, cool. The video that I caught was just the interview itself. I didn't see any preamble. Did he do an intro to?
Brief. Like
Okay.
a minute and a half, maybe. It wasn't very long. He got right into the interview.
Gotcha.
I mean, there wasn't much to really talk. What are you going to talk about? Hey, it's Vlad fucking Putin. Let's get to the show.
That's what because the thing that I was popping it up on YouTube, so I was like, the thing that I saw was just the opening of the interview, and I was like, great, this doesn't really need an intro. It's the one guest where you don't have to say. You might know him from Instagram with his crazy videos of killing fucking people and blowing up planes.
Reputation precedes him.
Yeah. A man who needs no introduction.
VP.
Vladimir Putin. But yeah, for Tucker, man, it's a big get. Obviously, you got a gajillion viewers on it. Monetize, like monetarily, what do you think he makes off of something like this from Twitter?
Off Twitter, not much, but from what I've gathered, he's trying to stand up his own independent news organization that will be off Twitter. And I'm sure whatever he's doing on Twitter that he thinks is going to grow his stature and his audience for when he stands up this new media company, he just assumes, okay, I'm just increasing the potential income for when I start that.
Okay. And then for you personally, anything that you're keeping an eye on media-wise or Los Angeles-wise, Hollywood-wise?
Okay.
What's going on out there? Because I know that's what you talk about in your show a lot and everything else.
I mean, do you want to get into the LA Times stuff that I kind of went viral for?
I mean, we can just fucking pop some champagne, I guess. We don't have to talk about it too much. Just
I'll give it quick, and I'll tell you about the one race that I think is I don't think is without a doubt the most interesting and impactful local election, like not congressional, not presidential, in 2024. That's Los Angeles District Attorney. Okay, 2020, a guy named George Gascon, who after destroying, the ultimate in criminal justice reform, essentially code word for I'm more sympathetic to criminals. And I read some stupid study from upstairs medical college of God knows where that says the human brain does not develop until 25. So anyone who commits any crime up to about the age of 25 is not really responsible for it. And George Gascon, after implementing this supposedly criminal justice reform philosophy into San Francisco and driving San Francisco into the ground, somehow comes in under the cover of darkness into LA as a carpetbagger and runs for DA against Jackie Lacey, who's the first black female district attorney in Los Angeles history, and beats her. Right? Mm-hmm. He rides the wave of George Floyd, of criminal justice reform. Eric Garcetti, the mayor, who until his entire political career, until about midway through his mayoral tenure, was a very centrist, moderate Democrat. But then, BLM, the progressives are shifting the party to the left. I'm going to bend the knee to the left. Eric Garcetti shifts his endorsement from the incumbent Jackie Lacey, black female, to George Gascon about a month and a half before the election. Soros gives him $2.5 million. It ain't no fucking conspiracy. It's all publicly available, and Soros is very proud of the money he gave George Gascon. George Gascon comes in day one, makes trespassing and a host of other laws, essentially says, I'm not going to prosecute these laws.
We talked about him on the show.
Then they mirrored the Canadian law from, 2012, I think, where theft under 1,000's a citation and not a misdemeanor anymore.
Yes. So that was Prop 47. Yeah. That was passed in 2014 by the voters. Who do you think authored it? George Gascon.
Well, George Soros' team authored it. He just put it forward, probably.
Right? Gascon's a true believer. This is
for sure.
Thing.
Yeah. They write model legislation in the same way that what was the name of that stupid PAC? Something for growth. I can't remember what it is. The Koch brothers PAC back in the day. Did the same thing. They like the Act 10 stuff that they did in Wisconsin to break the unions up there. All the all the union busting stuff that you see around the country. That's all Koch brothers. That's all Tesoro refineries. Mm-hmm. Just footing the bill for that. And on the Soros side, it's no cash bail. What do they call it? Harm reduction.
Sure.
Like some kind of Gaylord bullshit.
Yeah. Or, letting how about this? Prop 47, which made theft under 950, non-prosecutable and let about 30,000 criminals out of jail early, supposedly non-violent. But hey, non-violent criminals become violent criminals when they don't have many career prospects real quick. You know what it was called? You know what this piece of legislation was called? Mm-mm. The Safe Neighborhoods and Schools Act.
So the exact opposite.
The exact opposite. So of course, of course, the residents passed Prop 47. Crime starts to spiral a little bit. Homelessness starts to increase a little bit 2014 to 17, 18 in LA. Starts to get worse right before the pandemic and then just skyrockets during the pandemic. George Gascon comes in, stops prosecuting any number of crimes. Everyone in the DA's office, 98% of the people who work for him wanted him recalled. I can get into another story about the recall and why it failed. A little bit, some mistakes by the recall committee, but also because they didn't clear the voter rolls in Los Angeles County, which how many signatures you need to recall an official is based on how many eligible voters there are. They didn't clear the voter rolls, so they didn't reduce the amount of signatures that you needed based on how many fewer voters were in the county, right? So that's why he didn't get recalled. The one positive sentiment about this is that there has been a very negative reaction to George Gascon. His approval rating, depending on which poll, is anywhere from 18 to 28%. The citizens of LA are not happy with him. They recognize he's been a poisonous force. Even a Democratic, well, I guess I could mention his name because he tweeted it publicly, Michael Trujillo, who's been a Democratic political consultant in LA for a long time, he says, yeah, dude, I don't care who runs against Gascon, he's losing. We'd mention his name in 2022. Even the most dyed-in-the-wool Democrats would be like, I hate that guy. However, it's still complicated to defeat this guy. And this election will be a referendum on Soros reformist DAs and George Gascon and this kind of a criminal justice reform movement that peaked in 2020 and got a couple people like him elected. It's a record number of people are running for district attorney. There's 13 people in the primary against George Gascon. Unfortunately, multiple good candidates because nobody's really rallying behind one right now because there's probably 5 or 6 candidates who would be phenomenal DAs. Yeah. I know some of them. But the interesting rub here is one guy that's running who probably, if you were to peg a favorite for who's going to get to the runoff against Gascon, is a guy named Nathan Hochman. I like Nathan Hochman. I think he'd be a great DA. Here's the problem. He just recently ran for Attorney General of California as a Republican. So he has a little, but so simultaneously he has by far the most sophisticated campaign apparatus. He's raised the most money, knows what he's doing as a campaigner. He does have a little baggage as a Republican. If he ends up number 2 against Gascon, trust me, I'm going to do everything in my power to get him elected. However, it will be interesting that Gascon, if he ends up against literally any other of the primary candidates, will get trounced. However, the one guy who might make it through is the one guy who is the most vulnerable against him. This is a fascinating race.
Well, I think this is a fascinating race because just being from Los Angeles, living there, I should say, not being there, but it's one of those cities that was driven into the ground so quickly that I think the world is watching this in New York City in particular.
Sure.
Because New York is on the same fucking
Alvin Bragg is up
trajectory.
for re-election as well. He got $2 million from fucking Soros also.
I think that he's got 2 more years until his.
Oh, yeah, that's right. He's got 2 more years.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
So with those 2 cities, though, it's
they're the bellwethers.
Do you look at it and say, all right, these policies clearly aren't working? Because I always look at San Francisco of like, man, they'll vote this out and change this and turn it around, and they never did.
Think about what he just said, though. Think about the people that have come out of San Francisco. George Gascon is the most recent to come out. Kamala Harris.
Yep.
And your current governor.
But they're failing upwards.
Yeah,
okay,
correct.
So there's,
they're taking their show on the road, right? Taking it down
nationally
to LA and fucking that up too.
But here's something that's interesting because some of it is just basic civics. For instance, San Francisco, everyone say what you want about San Francisco. They recalled their psycho DA, and their DA that they reinserted, Brooke Jenkins, is not a psycho. She's a perfectly adequate DA. She's got an uphill battle. They were able to get the recall because San Francisco only requires 85,000 signatures to get a recall going. LA required 540,000. Okay? One of the reasons Rick Caruso lost, mayor of Los Angeles is not the same as mayor of Los Angeles County. The mayor of Los Angeles, cities that everyone thinks of is in Los Angeles that don't vote for LA mayor. West Hollywood, generally more conservative, even though you don't think so. Beverly Hills, some places on the west side, Palisades, had all the areas that you think of as LA been voting in the LA mayor's race, Rick Caruso would have won. But that's not how it's district. It's different, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of little civic aspects. But the problem is, despite those areas not technically being LA and voting in the LA mayor's race, all the impact of the policies in LA impacts them all because they're right kitty corner against all the districts that do vote for it.
And LA is known for sprawl, right? And it used to be success sprawled, and now it's homelessness is sprawling, right?
Yeah.
And the fucking massive fucking budget deficit they're growing down there. Now, there's not specific races, but San Francisco is another interesting city because Gary Tan, he runs the incubator that produced Airbnb and DoorDash and all sorts of other companies. He's got a couple bucks on him, right? Him and a bunch of other tech billionaires in the Bay Area are fucking pissed about what's going on in San Francisco, and they're starting to spend their own money there to get rid of the board of supervisors who are just a bunch of crazy leftist freaks.
Yep.
People that just voted for a ceasefire in Israel. Like, shut the fuck up, dude.
Like, what? Did you see the video afterwards? Oh my god,
they had a party. They had a
little
it was
party.
the Star Wars Cantina fucking freak show. Oh my god.
My HOA voted on it too, by the way, just so you know. So
I
I
think
need
it's
you
gonna
and your
stop.
Jews to calm the fuck down.
Yeah, I think the ceasefire will happen this weekend.
Yeah,
Now's the point in the show we get to the Drinkin' Bro of the Week, which is someone who has inspired you, helps you become the person you are today. Who would you like to give the Drinkin' Bro of the Week to?
George Soros. Fucking knew it, dude. It's a setup this whole time.
That's it. I'll give it up to Alex Soros and Nika Soon-Shiong because my hate for these out-of-touch, ignorant trust fund babies who think they have any business commenting or involving themselves on how the world should work has inspired me to get very aggressive in response.
Yeah, you've certainly gotten more vocal over time being out there. I'm surprised you never got the fuck out of there.
Well, you know.
Listen, it's okay. One, LA, I'm sorry. There's a reason that it was the place that everyone wanted to go for
The weather.
100 goddamn years.
The weather.
It's a great equalizer. It's still LA. And here's the thing, business-wise and professionally, there's a lot of smart people there. That's what people overlook in that there's a lot of shallow idiots. There's a lot of ambitious, talented, smart people doing interesting business things there. My family, my parents are their late 70s. They're still there.
Okay.
Listen, I don't let these motherfuckers, why am I leaving? Fuck these motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Why am I leaving? They should leave. Get these idiots out. It's
All
like
right.
we did it once. Like the city with Antonio Villaraigosa running it was perfectly acceptable.
Yeah.
If this is a city that can run with Antonio Villaraigosa as in charge, okay, we don't need to get the most brilliant people in the history of the world inserted as the elected officials. We just need replacement level.
I told everybody this forever on this show. It was like, dude, when Schwarzenegger was in, shit was fine, dude. Like everything was rolling properly, and like they were starting to clean up LA. And
Which
all
shows you
that.
how bad
too.
Gray Davis was, right? I mean, Jesus Christ, how bad was Gray Davis that Schwarzenegger came in and it immediately improved? They went from a massive budget deficit to a surplus in 2 years.
Yeah, but the guy from Pump, the documentary, could come in and fucking do it. Like, it is possible.
It's absolutely. Oh, here's
It's just
another.
changing the
I think you need
policies.
more than just politicians there, though, right? Like you got to bring in. Giuliani brought in Bernie Kerik in New York in the '90s, right? And he fucking murdered all the homeless people and did whatever the fuck. I don't know what he did, but Penn Station was clean for the first time in its history, right?
Well, the LAPD police chief just announced his retirement. The interim chief, one person who I do trust, says at least the interim chief, he speaks highly of him, which is interesting. But it doesn't matter who here's the biggest problem with LA. You know, the mayor, Karen Bass, not a fan of hers in 90 different ways.
Sucks.
Yeah, but you want to know something she did that I can't not give her credit for? She went to bat and got increased funding for the police. Here's the only problem. Nobody will take the job. They're waving money at people to be cops in LA.
Yeah.
Nobody wants the money.
Yeah, they're
I
offering
understand.
$105K for entry level police work.
That's
get
the
it.
biggest fucking problem.
I wouldn't either, man.
It's the same thing in San Francisco. People are leaving. Oakland now is losing all their cops, which I don't know why anybody was still working there in the
Me
first
neither,
place,
dude.
to be honest.
Me neither.
Like, you paid me to fucking be a police, not to fucking go to war. But
Yeah.
I think Los Angeles cures homelessness by 2028
It'll be okay. Here's
for the Olympics. They'll throw
What,
all
do
of
you
them
think
into
there's
the
any
fucking
chance that
ocean.
Villanueva runs for mayor at some point?
No, he's not. He's not generally. He's been poisoned. But here's who may very well run for governor in 2026, which is promising, is Rick Caruso, and I think he can win.
Okay.
Yeah, no, because everyone forgets one: state of California, slightly more conservative than city of LA. There's no good candidate. The California Democratic Party, who they're going to card out to try to take over for Newsom, is this lieutenant governor named Eleni something. There's nothing exciting about her. And Caruso, I think, is pissed off because I think he knows what he did wrong in losing that election and can clean it up. And I think he wants to run for governor. That's why
He's a very smart businessman, too. So that
Yeah.
could help as well.
What about Steve Garvey?
no chance.
No
See,
chance.
Adam, was he running for Senate, right? Against
Yeah.
Adam Schiff.
Against Schiff. I saw Schiff's video yesterday, narrated by Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Yeah.
Why would you want to tie yourself to that fucking turd?
Yeah, one person, she's not going to win, but I respect her so much for running. My friend Christina Pescucci was a KTLA 5 reporter, and right after learning she was pregnant, is still said, I'm so pissed off. I've seen, because she was a reporter, and she's seen behind closed doors everything that goes on with these politicians, and has put through her hat in the Senate race, and is actually polling, at legitimate figure. She won't win, but I just have to give it up to her real quick for like the balls and the effort she put to to try to turn things around. And she has in the long run, I think she has a great political career ahead of her in California. But it was probably too short a timeline for her for the Senate race.
Okay, tell everybody where they can find you.
Everybody, primarily Instagram and Twitter. Matt Bilinsky, MattBilinsky. I have a podcast called The Prevailing Narrative. Find it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you find your podcasts.
Yes, and while you're listening to that, go to ours and just rate the show a 5-star and leave a quick review on iTunes. Also, head on over to Spotify. Just a 5-star and you can walk away. When we get to 10,000 reviews, I'll shut the fuck up and never mention it. We're at 8,000 on Spotify, 7,100 on iTunes. Get us over the 10. I'll shut the fuck up forever. Matt, always a pleasure to have you on the show. Whenever you're in Austin, feel free to stop on in. We appreciate you guys tuning in at home. For Anthony Holloway, I'm Ross Patterson. This is the Drinkin' Bros Podcast. Good night, everyone.